The rumor hit like a thunderclap. Parker Schnabel didn't just strike pay. He supposedly tripped a vein in Brazil so massive it could rattle currencies. $6 billion. It sounds cinematic because it is. But here's the uncomfortable part. The jungle doesn't care about headlines. The Amazon swallows gear, ruins timetables, and it exposes hype faster than a busted hose. Cameras showed Parker sliding into a wild, opportunity-rich frontier. Promos hinted at billion-dollar potential, and the internet stitched those teases into a fantasy. A secret deal, a hidden map, a vault of gold under the canopy. Except rumors don't run excavators, and fairy tales don't make weigh-ins. What actually happened is better than mythology. A hard look at a region where fortunes are possible but never free, where permits matter more than bravado, and where logistics eat dreams for breakfast. The real story isn't a magic vein, it's a blueprint for how modern miners turn chaos into ounces without blowing up their reputation. So let's peel back the layers. The river, the dredges, the paperwork, the rivals, the crew, and the math no one wants to do on camera. Because the deeper you go, the more this whisper starts to sound like something else entirely. Parker didn't drift into Brazil on a hunch. He followed noise, credible noise. The Madeira churns like wet concrete and hums with floating gear that can chew through pay at a speed most land crews only dream about. Local operators run rigs that look improvised until you notice the throughput, the fuel discipline, the quiet wisdom of people who've learned to live with a river that punishes hesitation. Parker's team stepped into that world to learn, not to LARP. They chased the old names, Serra Pelada, the open-pit legend that turned hillsides into ladders of men, and tracked the new chatter, where the rivers shifted, where the flakes ride the current, where drive time and fuel burn, make, or break the day. On screen, you saw the highlight reel, boats buzzing, pans shining, talk of billion-dollar potential in a country-sized prospect. Off-screen, the checklist hit like a brick. Permits, environmental clearances, river transport, security, local partnerships, wet season clock, fuel, staging, parts that only arrive by miracle. The Amazon pays fast only after you've paid long. And the bill isn't just money, it's time, reputation, and the patience to fight the same piece of paper through 3 different offices. The crew did find gold because Brazil is not shy about showing it, but the bigger takeaways were operational. How do you keep iron alive when everything is damp, hot, and far? How do you move fuel without bleeding margin? How do you sample ground without waking a hornet's nest of copycats? And there's another layer, visibility. A public figure with cameras doesn't get to operate quietly. Every decision becomes a test case. Do this sloppy, and you're internet famous for all the wrong reasons. Do it right, and you still need to earn trust. Because nobody in the Amazon has time for outsiders who show up loud and leave louder. Which brings us to the number that refuses to shut up, and why it never made sense in the first place. Start with what's real. Parker's heaviest haul didn't happen in Brazil. It happened back home when the crew smashed through their personal best and weighed in multi-thousand ounces on camera. That's not luck, that's uptime, ground knowledge, and a warehouse of spare parts. Even at that scale, you're talking 8-figure gold, life-changing to most, routine to markets. Now hold that picture next to $6 billion. To reach that figure from one discovery, you'd need a deposit so big and so defined that paperwork would outpace rumor. Exploration permits, geochem results, drill data, environmental assessments, partnership agreements, financing notes, shipping manifests, security contracts, the administrative exhaust of a monster find. Here's the part the click machine hates. Big deposits create noise long before they create bars. They show up in filings, satellite runs, equipment orders you can't hide, and a sudden rush of suits who pretend they're not suits. And you don't tap a public multi-billion deposit quietly in a region under environmental scrutiny. Markets sniff it, rivals talk, journalists circle. The $6 billion line sounds dramatic because it leaps over the grind that makes real money. It skips the drills, the assays, the years, and the headaches. Everything Parker has built his career on. That said, there's a reason the rumor had legs. Brazil does host deposits that can bend the mind. People hear billion-dollar potential and translate it into done deal. But opportunity isn't a bank balance, it's a door. Walking through it still takes tonnage, time, and proof. If Parker had stumbled into a vein fat enough to change national spreadsheets, you wouldn't need a whisper network. You'd feel the vibration in the supply chain before a single bar left the jungle. So if it isn't a fairy tale motherlode, what exactly makes Brazil worth the trouble and so hard to do cleanly? Gold in the Amazon comes with a bill. People don't like to read out loud. Unregulated pits and river ops leave scars you can see from orbit and toxins you can't see at all. The word most outsiders learn fast is mercury. Cheap to buy, devastating to water and health. Governments know this, enforcement knows this, and responsible miners ignore it at their peril. In recent years, crackdowns have gone from seasonal to surgical, snipping supply chains, seizing fuel, dismantling illicit rigs, and choking the networks that treat the forest like a disposable filter. For a legitimate outfit, that landscape is more than background noise. It's a maze with moving walls. Your processing tech has to pass standards. Your tailings have to be defensible. Your partnerships must be real, not rented. Even your comms matter. A sloppy post can look like a confession. If you're a high-visibility miner, multiply all that by 10. You can't just roll in and dig. You roll in with a compliance plan, a local strategy, and a security posture that avoids turning the site into a magnet for people you don't want to meet after dark. And that's before you get to the river. Boats fail, pumps fail, bearings cry for mercy. Fuel goes missing unless you treat it like gold. Storms don't reschedule just because your excavator finally arrived. The Amazon will test every system you thought was bulletproof and then ask for seconds. Run it right and you'll earn something more valuable than a great weigh-in. Permission to keep operating. Run it sloppy and the forest remembers. That's why the $6 billion fairy tale collapses under one simple truth. A discovery that big would throw a shadow you couldn't hide. And it would be audited from every angle before the first bucket. Which leads to the next myth, the magic map and the secret handshake that supposedly shortcut the grind. Every gold legend starts with a shortcut, a dog-eared map, a nod from an insider, a handshake that opens the gate to a private El Dorado. The reality is paperwork, not parchment. If you're converting jungle chatter into a mine, you need geophysics to narrow the target, drilling to prove continuity, assays for grade, environmental sign-offs to touch dirt, contracts to protect the capital, logistics to feed the iron, and a schedule that survives the wet season. Miss one of those, and your vein becomes a campfire story retold at a roadside cafe. Real projects leave footprints. Corporate registrations shift. Specialized gear moves. Insurance underwriters ask annoying questions. Regulators stamp forms that later leak, because paper has a way of slipping through fingers. Parker knows this. His brand is not lottery ticket, it's throughput, moving staggering amounts of material efficiently, fixing iron before it breaks, squeezing cost from processes other crews accept as fate. That's how you set personal records season after season. It's boring to talk about and thrilling to watch when the numbers hit the scale. If Brazil ever flips from recon to reality for him, you'll see it in the pre-gold trail. Partners on paper, permits in motion, barges staged, fuel caches mapped, a small army of mechanics who swear they're not an army. Rumors will follow, because rumors always do, but they'll be tethered to facts you can actually point to. Facts that don't depend on a friend of a friend who heard the weigh-in was off the charts. Until then, treat the secret map narrative as what it is, a romantic shortcut that edits out the drill samples and the forms nobody wants to file. Still, even the best plan gets stress-tested the moment people and egos enter the frame. Gold doesn't just reveal ground, it reveals people. Put money, deadlines, and heavy iron in the same box and turn up the heat. You'll see who cracks, who claws, and who holds. Parker's journey has been a highlight reel of that human pressure. Least drama that turns polite deals into courtroom vibes. Royalty fights that make decent men say indecent things. Boundary disputes that explode because two loaders were pointed at the same pile. Old guard titans don't exactly love a new school operator eating their lunch, and the kid who grew up on TV isn't the kid anymore. He's competition with a track record. Inside the fence, the pressure multiplies. Crews burn out when the clock won't quit and the weather won't help. A foreman who thrives on adversity might also thrive on conflict. A mechanic who can resurrect a pump from a box of bolts needs sleep like everyone else. People change when ounces are on the line. Some leave, some return. Some have the uncomfortable argument that was waiting all season. That friction is the tax on winning. Avoid it and you lose your edge. Court it and you lose your crew. The balance is brutal. Now, stack Brazil on top of that. Partnerships with locals mean cultural fluency matters. Misread expectations and you'll have a deal that dissolves at the first missed truck. Regulators don't pause a review because your excavator is in pieces. Competitors smile while timing your mistakes. Social media narrates every spilled bucket like it's a scandal. If Parker pushes into the Amazon for real, the drama won't just be camera ready, it'll be operational. The same intensity that beat his own records will need to morph into diplomacy, patience, and planning that feels slow until it suddenly feels essential. And that's why the smartest bet here isn't a miracle vein. It's a method that travels anywhere there's dirt to move. Strip away the noise, and what remains is a miner who wins the old-fashioned way. Process over luck. That's not the internet's favorite story, but it's the one that turns weigh-ins into habits. The real edge isn't a secret map, it's a stack of unglamorous advantages. Belt speed tuned to the hour, preventative maintenance that looks paranoid until the pump keeps pumping, a fuel plan that treats diesel like a fragile supply chain instead of a bottomless drum. Add smarter sensing, better sampling, and data that tells you which cuts deserve iron tomorrow and which ones should sleep another week. This is the boring magic that beats rumors every season. If Parker turns Brazil from scouting to deployment, expect visible signs before viral claims. Barges that make sense. Partnerships with names that stand behind the paperwork, environmental systems that keep you on the right side of the line, and security protocols built to deter problems rather than film them. None of that screams. It hums. Then, and only then, the ounces start to speak. And when they do, it won't be a whispered 6 billion. It'll be a stream of weigh-ins that add up in public, a reputation that survives audits, and a footprint that earns the right to stay. So did Parker uncover the kind of vein you tell your grandkids about? The proof isn't there, but did he step into a region where billion-scale outcomes are plausible if you respect the jungle and play the long game? Absolutely. The Amazon is both a promise and a test. It rewards persistence, punishes shortcuts, and keeps secrets only from people who don't do the work. The headline everyone wants is a fairy tale. The story that actually matters is tougher and better. A miner refining the machine season after season until the numbers can't be argued with. That's how empires get built. Quietly at first, then all at once. And if there's a real shock coming, it won't be a rumor. It'll be the kind of result you can weigh in broad daylight. If a monster deposit really lurked under that canopy, it wouldn't reveal itself with a whisper. It would march forward in stages you could trace, like boot prints after rain. First comes geology that refuses to shut up. Soil anomalies lined up across a grid. Rock chips that keep returning spicy assays. And early step-out holes that whisper continuity. Even then, the stakes are still shy of fireworks. The next phase is boring in the best way. Core drilling in fences so tight you can play checkers across them. QA/QC protocols that would make a lab tech grin. And independent verifiers who don't care about TV but care deeply about error bars. A $6 billion claim can't lean on vibes. It leans on repeatable data that stands up when outsiders try to poke holes through it. Meanwhile, money starts moving differently. Explorers raise cash in tranches with milestones attached. Equipment orders get weirdly specific. Spare pumps in bulk. Screens sized for throughput that says, we're not just testing anymore. Barges spec'd to carry more than a weekend's dream. Insurance underwriters begin asking questions that feel like interrogations, because liability on a project that size is measured in commas. You'll also see community engagement flip from courtesy to core. Clinics, road repairs, school partnerships, signals that a company expects to be around long enough to matter. That isn't greenwashing, it's survival. If your operation touches a river that touches a village, your social license has to be stronger than the bolts on your trommel. And then, There's security without the spotlight. Real projects harden their perimeter without advertising a challenge. That means controlled fuel storage, access badges that actually work, transport routes shuffled often enough that nobody gets comfortable, and just enough deterrence to keep the wrong kind of curiosity from turning into a late-night problem. The goal isn't to look tough, it's to look inconvenient to anyone thinking about testing the fence. Finally, a legitimate mega find, graduates to regulatory choreography. Environmental impact assessments grow from pamphlets into binders, complete with baseline water sampling and wildlife studies that aren't just checkbox theater. Hearing dates appear on calendars. Local officials show up with questions and leave with homework. Those meetings create public breadcrumbs that rumor can't manufacture. If a discovery that big were Parker's, the trail would be visible even to casual watchers. Filings, procurement, hiring, on-site infrastructure that doesn't fit inside a teaser reel. You'd see discipline before drama, and the ounces would come last. Not because they don't matter, but because the ounce is the end of a long, unglamorous parade of decisions that keep you legal, liquid, and welcome tomorrow. So where does that leave the $6 billion tale? Somewhere between wishful and entertaining. The Amazon absolutely holds ground that can swing a balance sheet, but turning geology into gold is a marathon lined with checkpoints. Parker's edge has never been a shortcut. It's a willingness to pass every checkpoint faster than the next guy without tripping the alarms. If he ever does lock a Brazil project that tilts the map, you won't have to squint. The proof won't be a rumor. It'll be a footprint you can follow from satellite pass to weigh-in scale, written in shipments, sign-offs, and a crew that somehow looks less tired than the river thinks they should. And that's the twist no headline captures. The biggest reveal in mining isn't the shout on weigh-in day. It's the quiet, relentless competence that makes the shout inevitable.